Thank you, Commissioner Sinai. This is a really interesting project that I'd like to explain to everybody. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And this is for a renovation to the courtyard of Suburban Square. We're all familiar with Suburban Square. This is the main courtyard that is located near the Lifetime Fitness building. Currently has trees and landscaping. What the applicant is seeking to do is to install an accessory structure approximately 2,100 square feet that would be used for seasonal outdoor dining. I think outdoor dining in where we are in the pandemic sounds great to all of us now. And what the applicant is seeking to do is it's part of this overall rebranding and significant investment by Kimco in Suburban Square. Anyone's been over to Suburban Square within the last year, you've seen many of the new projects completed. The Station Row building that was between the tracks and Coulter Avenue, two-story building that now has Urban Outfitters and a number of restaurants was recently completed along with that streetscape. There's a plaza between there and the train tracks and the train, the departing train station that's being constructed and has public art and seating. So the overall center has been significantly increased, including the new parking deck and many other amenities that are there. This is another addition to that, and this would be some outdoor dining. The applicant is working with a very high-end, reputable restaurateur from Center City that is looking to bring that model out to the main line. So in Suburban Square, this is the approximate location of where it would be placed, where I have the star. You can see a number of the other improvements that are here. This was before the Planning Commission in early September, and the Planning Commission had a series of questions, particularly relating to the setbacks. This is something that staff had also identified. This is an accessory building, and we wanted to make sure it complied with the new code provisions. Now, an accessory restaurant in the middle of a courtyard is something that we just didn't anticipate with the new zoning code. And so we were looking at first, shaking out the new code. How do we apply the standards for this? And we came forward with holding the 20-foot accessory building setback. The applicant had originally proposed to square off this building. That would have been in violation of that setback. The applicant, after meeting with the Planning Commission, revised the plans, and the new plans are before you comply with the required setback. As you can see, what's here is there is what's called a deck area. It's a raised deck, and it also has a raised open roof to it. It will have lighting, maybe perhaps heaters in the colder months. There's no cooking that is here, but there will be a restaurant, and the restaurant will actually, servers will come from the restaurant and then go into this area for the outdoor dining. The existing planters that are there now will stay, but they'll be replanted. There's a number of conditions requiring that the new plantings be primarily native and working with everything. This is part of this, once again, that overall regreening of the Suburban Square area. These are just some renderings that were provided. From a staff standpoint, and the Planning Commission did a great job on this. They really fleshed out a lot of the ideas. And, some of the concern was, well, here's the building. This is an area that people walk through on the plaza. Will there be enough room for circulation? Will there be enough room for circulation with people coming and going from the restaurant? The applicant spent time with the Planning Commission and answered all of their questions to their satisfaction. There were some questions about how does this impact the overall site greening? And as I pointed out earlier, I think you need to take this project in context of the overall center, that Suburban Square is giving a lot back to the community by taking other areas of the center and making them public spaces that were just kind of dead areas, just areas that weren't used. There's an area over by Not Your Average Joe's that has really become a very attractive area with outdoor seating that fronts on this area. So that area, with the concern of taking away public space, the Planning Commission was finally comfortable with that, with understanding that overall the amount of public space on the site that's usable and beneficial to the community is actually being increased. Here's just another picture of what the area, rendering of what the area would look like. I will note that the above this rendering that you see is a artificial turf lawn, heavily used by the community. There's been a number of events out there, and this should be something that really complements that. Once again, it's just a final graphic of the shell of what's being proposed to go in. I showed you the footprint. The applicant accepts all of the conditions, and I am happy to answer any of your questions. I will point out that there is some relief required for this, but it's only relief from procedure. The applicant is seeking to have this process as a waiver of land development. And a waiver of land development there is no waiver from any township requirements. All of the same township bulk area, impervious surface requirements, all must be held through that process. The waiver of land development only expedites the process, and staff brings these forward for applications that are relatively de minimis. So the waiver would be from a tentative sketch, following a preliminary plan, which would ordinarily be a two-step process. You'd have two meetings. One of the reasons why we're suggesting this being a waiver of land development, it's only one. I mean, we're going to get the issue. We should be able to resolve the issues in one meeting and let the applicant move on, also saving time for the commissioner. Once again, I'm happy to answer any of your
Thank you, Mr. Lessing. So I'm going to open it up for questions and comments. We'll do it in one round from the commissioners. And I'll note that we also have the applicant here. And I'm going to start by recognizing the ward commissioner, Commissioner Courtney, and then Commissioner Durbin.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinai. Chris, I sent you a few questions this afternoon, and I just was hoping to follow up on one of them. On the whole, when I've spoken to members of the community, I think there's been a very positive reception to this idea. The one concern that has been voiced has been about noise. Could you explain how the noise ordinance would apply to this outdoor restaurant, in particular in reference to condition 2, which says it can be open until midnight?
Right. Well, condition 2 was something that was brought in, introduced by the community, the North Ardmore community, several years ago. This is the first attempted renovation of this courtyard area. And at that time, where the new artificial turf went in, before the artificial turf, there was a circular driveway, and there was going to be more activity in this area. With that waiver of land development approval, the condition of limiting restaurant uses to no later than midnight was brought about by the community. So staff is bringing that forward. That seemed to be valid. There is a noise ordinance requirement that exempts noise from restaurants up to 11 o'clock. But that area between 11 and 12, the restaurants would still be able to be used. They would just not be exempt. They would need to comply with the noise ordinance at that time. So they're kind of complementary conditions, but ultimately there would be a curfew on the restaurant use at midnight with this condition. The applicant is willing to accept that.
And just to clarify, that's 11 p.m. on weekends, but 10 p.m. on weeknights.
Correct. I'm sorry.
Great. Yeah, I would just say I've talked to the community. I've talked to the developer, which is Kimco. There's general support for this. The noise concern was the only one, but I believe our noise ordinance can be applied here to mitigate any issues from that. I would also say that Suburban Square is a great amenity for the township, and this will be an addition to Suburban Square that I think will just increase the benefit that we receive, in particular, increasing outdoor dining opportunities, as Mr. Lessing said, is particularly great during this pandemic. So I hope all of you will join me in supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Commissioner Durbin, then Commissioner McComb.
Well, I'm in favor of what's being proposed here. I had one comment, which was I'm really glad that you paid attention to the vegetation, hoping to make it native instead of any more ginkgo biloba trees. And I just wondered, because we're waiving the other procedures, we don't have to get an okay from the county?
Correct. Waivers of land development plans are not reviewed by Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Durbin. So Commissioner McComb, then I see Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinai. I too support the proposal. I think it's a great idea. I'm looking at the staff memo that says that the space is currently being used for outdoor dining. And I take it that that use has not presented any problems in terms of noise or traffic or lighting or any of those things.
No, it's currently has a number of bistro tables, so people are grabbing lunch and eating there, but it's not, there really aren't the restaurants that are using that for outdoor dining in the evening. But to my knowledge, that hasn't been a problem when there were active restaurants here a couple years ago.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sinai. Chris, I just have a question about functionality. And one, is the structure meant to be permanent, or is this something that, depending on season or weather, would be removed? One, and two, wind resistant, or is this something that wouldn't become airborne in, a terrible storm or something like that? Thank you.
Oh, that's a great question. Now, this is a real structure. This is going to have footings and have to meet all applicable building codes, but it will be open to the elements. The applicant has mentioned that they may be looking at putting in some plastic walls, perhaps, and some to extend the fall hours out with space heaters. It's things that I think we've all seen out in the world, but this is really just it's an open air structure. It'll have some some temporary lights in it. It'll feel like you're outside with just minimum sorts of enclosure. But it's not something that one has to worry about in a heavy storm blowing away. It'll actually be somewhat of a shelter.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. President Bernheim.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinai. Chris, I'm sure you'll have an answer for this because I just literally just noticed it. One of the waivers is for not to provide a final plan, and condition 14 says the location of all transformers and utility boxes shall be shown on the final plan. Help me out.
Correct. That is one of our standard conditions of approval that we tacked onto that. Fortunately, with this, I don't believe that we would see any locations of transformers associated with this, but they would be shown on, if they were, they would be shown on permits.
We can make that
Which
the
would
final,
supersede the final plan.
we can make that the final permit plan.
Permits, right. Okay, that makes sense.